what the previous editions of the game were telling us about what was compelling, but also what our players were currently telling us. And you probably have heard a lot of this in your stores. Things like, you know, I'm playing D&D Encounters and I'm having a great time in my store, but what's next? What can I do next, right? And before, you know, there wasn't always necessarily the clearest answer for that. So what we've instead done is we've said we're going to go ahead and really focus our organized play experience on creating an interconnected play experience that kind of allows you to kind of go as deep as you want, right? And create a tiered play system that involves casual players and franchise players, people that go to conventions, people that go play in the store at a regular basis, but keep everything focused on that in-person public play experience using the store as a centerpiece, right? So that's something that hasn't changed, right? And we're committed to that. And also the last thing about this is one of our big goals is really allowing players to have more input into you know, the play experience and to influence the campaign as you would in sort of a home game. So that's something we're also going to be doing. So as you can see, before we had, if you go back a couple of years, we had 3 play programs for Dungeons & Dragons. So like, let's take the time machine back to like 2011, for example. And you can see that we had 3 play programs. They were Dungeons & Dragons Encounters, which we launched in 2010 to great success. D&D Lair Assault, which was a program that we created for enfranchised players to give them a tactical combat experience, right, and really kind of give them a challenge every time they came into the store. And then D&D Living Forgotten Realms, which was more of our convention-style experience. It was for an enfranchised player that wanted a little bit longer sessions on the weekends and such. And so all these programs existed, but they really didn't talk to each other, right? So you'd make a character for D&D Encounters or Lair Assault or Living Forgotten Realms, and you'd play that character and enjoy it, but you really wouldn't be able to take that character anywhere, right? And now what we've done is we've created a suite of programs that interconnects with each other, right? All these experiences are all part of the same basic campaign, as you will. If I'm a player and I participate in one of these programs, I can go to the other program and know that I can take my character from place to place to place. This is going to create just a deeper immersion in the game experience for the players. It's going to allow the players to you know, bring the excitement of their last play experience into their next play experience, right? So for example, I go to GenCon and I have a great time this weekend. I can come back to my store and bring those stories back to the store and say, listen, I had such a great time at GenCon, it was awesome, and get those other players excited for participating in the store and being evangelists for the game. Really important for us to really establish this interconnectivity. So we have these 3 programs. And they are all part, oh, there's somebody else. We'll talk about him in a minute. They are all part of the D&D Adventurers League. And the D&D Adventurers League is basically our overarching name for our organized play system. We'll cover that in a minute. So I had a little sneak preview there for you. So let me talk a little bit about that guy. So another thing I'm going to kind of intersperse in my slides here is a little bit of Monster Manual sneak peeks for you. What I have for you are some images for the Monster Manual, which is coming out next month. And I'm sure a lot of you are excited about seeing that book. These images are the first time they've been really seen in public. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a couple of the monsters, too, while we're doing our organized play presentation. So this is a, anybody know what this is? Wait, what was that? Who said that? Bone Devil. There you go. Give that man a, I don't know, player's handbook. So, yeah, this is a Bone Devil. So the Bone Devil is awesome, right? This version of the Bone Devil. Some of you, might notice he has some wings. This is sort of a version of the Bone Devil that kind of combines some of the iconic look and feel of the Bone Devil throughout all the editions of the game. It's kind of is a great example of how we're kind of taking a look at everything in the past editions of Dungeons & Dragons and kind of putting it all together and creating sort of the best version of the monster that we possibly can. I'll even give you a little bit of a teaser from the Monster Manual here. I have a description from the Bone Devil. So the Bone Devil, which we lost, there he is. He is driven by hate, lust, and envy, and he acts as the cruel taskmaster of the 9 hells. They set weaker devils to work. They take special delight in seeing fiends that defy them demoted. So They're all about you know, making sure that they can be as tyrannical as they can. And at the same time, they long for promotion and are bitterly envious of their superiors, attempting to curry favor, though it irks them to do so. So that's sort of the Bone Devil's role within their hellish community amongst the other devils. So now let's talk a little bit about the D&D Adventurers League. So I mentioned before, this is sort of the name of the system for organized play. So what we have done is we've kind of said, you know, it's not just about sort of communicating to players that that there's an organized play system. It's about actually immersing the players in that organized play system. And one way we do that is we use names, right? So the D&D Adventurers League is a name that we can use that kind of actually feels like you're actually kind of part of a campaign, right? And you're like part of a group, right? We chose a D&D Adventurers League for a very great reason. The word league actually sort of has a double meaning. For a lot of retailers and store owners and such, it might mean that a league is something that happens every week. It's an ongoing experience, right? It's a play experience that you do all the time. But then also league, when you kind of look at a group of heroes, right, it's kind of like the Justice League or something, right? It's, you know, it's a gathering of heroes, right, that are there to take on whatever the challenge is presented before them. So all of our play experiences fall under the D&D Adventurers League. When you as a player create a character for the D&D Adventurers League, what you're doing is you're creating a character that can participate in all of these programs. So, and that's sort of how you look at it. These programs consist of D&D Encounters, D&D Expeditions, and D&D Epics. All three of these programs talk to each other. They all are part of the same thematic storylines. And they all sort of serve a different function within the overarching umbrella of the D&D Adventurers League. So the first program is probably pretty familiar to you, D&D Encounters. But what we'll do right now is we'll go ahead and we'll talk about persistence. So, and with regards to D&D Encounters, what persistence is we heard that players, you know, really loved playing D&D Encounters. They play at first level and they get their characters up to like third, fourth level or whatever. And then they go, what's next? And there'd be another season of D&D Encounters to play in, and it would start at first level again, right? And they'd kind of discard their characters and have to build a new one. However, now that we have persistence, what this means is you can take your character and you can keep playing it and engage as deep as you want to go. So now your players in your store will be able to go ahead and continue to play that character beyond just the current D&D Encounters season. And our programs will support that. Our persistent elements will include our characters' certificates, which are cool, unique items that are really only available in the store kits and at very, very select conventions, and our factions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So all these persistent elements will keep you playing much beyond just the current storyline. Our storyline seasons, like Tyranny of Dragons, will basically begin and then they'll run for a few months and then they'll end and a new storyline will start. But that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to stop playing that character just because a new storyline starts. You can bring that character into the next storyline if you want, or you can use that opportunity to create a new character if you'd like. So we talked a little bit about the factions. I mentioned them briefly. The player factions are one of our big sort of new components for D&D organized play through the Adventurers League. We've experimented with factions before. Some of our past organized play programs have talked a little bit about them. But here we're really bringing them full front and center, right? And they're kind of a core part of the D&D organized play experience. We have 5 different factions. Each one of these factions sort of ranges in sort of how heroic they are, right? And basically what we're doing with the factions is we're saying there are 5 factions. They all kind of see threats to the Forgotten Realms, and they all kind of rise up to meet the challenge of defeating those threats. And they do work together. But they all kind of have different motivations and reasons for doing so, and they also sort of have a little bit different methods from time to time, right? So some of them are a little bit more gray than others, and they all tend to be very interesting when they're combined together at a table. The idea behind the factions isn't necessarily to provide a player versus player experience or anything like that. The idea is that more it's a friendly competition kind of thing, right? It's sort of You start out, you have the story, right, where the two characters don't like each other much at the beginning, and then they get thrown into a situation which makes them work together, right? And then they kind of come out of that situation having some respect for each other, even if they don't see eye to eye. So that's sort of the idea behind the factions. Here we have the Harpers, which is represented by the moon and the harp. The Harpers are probably the most iconic Forgotten Realms faction that we have. The Harpers are big on freedom and gathering arcade knowledge and keeping it from those that are tyrannical. So that's sort of their shtick. They're kind of like a spy network too, and they commonly have a lot of wizards and bards that join their organization. We have the Order of the Gauntlet, which is represented by the gauntlet and the sword there. These guys are basically vigilant defenders of justice. When evil strikes, these guys strike back hard. They will hit evil back hard. They're very reactive in nature, and they're represented. They also have sort of a religious bent to them. They can feel that way. They're represented a lot by clerics and paladins. They tend to gravitate toward that order. We have represented by the green stag there. We have the Emerald Enclave. The Emerald Enclave believes in the balance between nature and civilization. They believe that one shouldn't necessarily encroach too much on the other. They are usually loners, a little bit more independent than the other factions are. And they're bards and druids, or I'm sorry, druids. Yeah, druids and rangers tend to be part of the Emerald Enclave. Then we have the Lord's Alliance. Lord's Alliance faction is a faction devoted to promoting order and stability. Right? Their whole idea is, the status quo is fine. We need to keep that going. We need to keep the people that are in charge need to stay in charge. Right? We don't want everything to devolve into chaos. They also are very interested in glory, both for themselves and for the Lord's Alliance in general. Fighters tend to gravitate towards the Lord's Alliance, as well as other members of the nobility. And the last faction we have is the Zentarum, and some of you might be familiar with these guys. So, interesting story about the Zentarum is, of course, in the history of the Forgotten Realms, these guys have kind of been painted as villains to a degree. Sort of now they've mellowed out a little bit now. They're still pretty gray, and they still kind of have their own ways that they want to accomplish things. But they're kind of more like a more organized crime syndicate, right? So these guys believe in power, and they really want to eventually take control of all of Faerun, but they're a little more subtle in the way that they do so now. Rogues and warlocks tend to be drawn to the Zentarum. So these are our player factions. They're really awesome. Any of you get kits? Great, awesome. Did you open up your kits, take a look at the materials inside? So there's some really cool stuff inside the kits. We have these player faction folios. And the faction folios, right, if you haven't seen them, guys, I don't have one here actually to give you. I'll bring one to game night tonight, though. The faction folios, you open them up, and inside, each one of them has all these materials that are themed to the faction that's chosen. So you give a player the faction folio, and they have all these cool immersive elements that instantly get them really hooked into the game, right? So they want to kind of play and participate as part of that faction. Dungeon Master also has a folio, and we kind of make the Dungeon Master's folio sort of oriented toward the bad guys, because we want the Dungeon Masters to feel as though they're kind of connecting to the story in a different way, right? So they're a very big part of our organized play experience. And as you see our D&D Encounters kits going forward, you're going to see more and more of that kind of stuff, right? You're going to see the folios and such. Oh, hey, look who showed up. This is Spirit Naga. So Spirit Naga is also the monster manual. And the Spirit Naga, let's see if I can find my little write-up on him. He lives in gloom and spitefulness, constantly plotting vengeance against creatures that have wronged them, or wronged him, or that they believe have wronged them. Lairing in dismal caverns and ruins, Spirit Nagas devote their time to developing new spells and enslaving mortals with which they surround themselves. A Spirit Naga likes to charm its foes, drawing them close so that it can sink its poisonous fangs into their flesh. This is a pretty cool, cool illustration. The Naga illustrations are pretty sweet. There's like 3 or 4 different Nagas in the monster manual, and this is one of them. All right, let's talk about D&D Encounters a little bit more. So, D&D Encounters remains our casually focused program. It is the program by which we assume that most people will enter the storyline at your store if they're a tabletop role-playing customer. Our focus continues on weekly Wednesday play. That's where D&D Encounters core is at, and that's what we'll continue to support. We estimate that most people are probably running 1 or 2 hour sessions. We're still kind of big on that, right? That's really the ideal length of time, about 2 hours on a Wednesday night. Some of your players might want more or less of a session. D&D Encounters has become more flexible now to support that. So that is one minor change to the program. You may have seen inklings of this change in the past with the Sundering seasons and and some of the seasons before. So feel free to go ahead and adjust to your community. So if your community wants a shorter experience, longer experience, that's all possible within D&D Encounters. The story for D&D Encounters is delivered through the published tabletop adventure, the for sale adventure. So for this first season, we're talking about Tyranny of Dragons. Horde of the Dragon Queen is our first adventure. The Horde of the Dragon Queen storyline, or the storyline presented in Horde of the Dragon Queen, will take the characters from levels 1 to 7 or 8 or so by the end of it. During D&D Encounters, though, if you're running about 2 hours a night, you're probably only going to get through maybe most of the adventure, but not all of it. So what we've decided to do is we've cut down the adventure into a complimentary portion, which we've delivered to your stores for free via PDF. Even if you have not picked up a kit for D&D Encounters, you could still schedule and get this free PDF. So I would encourage you to go ahead and schedule D&D Encounters, because it is nice to be able to have that complimentary portion of the adventure to run on weekly Wednesdays for the stores. That first part of that adventure covers the first 3 episodes or what have you of Horde of the Dragon Queen. It'll get characters from levels 1 to 4 or so. And it should take approximately somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 to 18 weeks to complete at your store. Now, D&D Encounters Tyranny of Dragons this season is going to be a little bit longer than that in total. That's fine. What we've decided to do is we've given you a complimentary portion to run that is a little bit shorter than the actual season length, so that if you have a week where, for example, a holiday falls on the week, or something happens like maybe your store closes down, or what have you, you can miss that week. Totally okay, right? Your players shouldn't have to feel like they're behind, right? The other thing too with D&D Encounters is after you finish with the complimentary portion of it.
Excuse me, Chris, I will just interrupt for a second. There's lots of seats here, so could you please come and move here, because for security reasons.
Oh.
That you are sitting on actual seats. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, no problem at all. So the other thing too is that after you finish with the complimentary portion of Horde of the Dragon Queen, your players can pick up the adventure and continue the adventure, and the kit actually does support that. It talks about that in the kit. It gives you certificates to give out to players to reward them for continued play. So another reason why kind of purchasing that product off the shelf and continuing the play is a good idea. So we were talking about the kit components. The kit components are pretty cool. Like I said, the faction kits and the DM kits are the big part of the components. The other thing that we have is certificates. Some of you may have seen them. Certificates are basically an extra reward for players that play in your stores. And what it basically is when a player participates in a D&D adventure, D&D Adventures League adventure, there will be magic items in those adventures. They can simply write those on their character log sheet, and they'll have them, and that's awesome. But if they have a certificate for the item that they just earned, they can then trade those items to other people. So certificates unlock the ability to trade. The other thing is they're just a nice memento of your play experience, right? They look nice. They're pretty fancy. So so they're kind of a fun way to kind of add some value to the play experience in your store. And we talked a little bit about the complimentary edition of the adventure. So this is, anybody know what this is? No one? Close, close. This is kind of a little bit of a newer look for this guy. He's a little bit more badass. This is a marrow. So some of you may know marrow. Marrow are kind of like evil merfolk, right? Effectively, the marrow have a really cool backstory though in 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, I have a little bit of their backstory right here. So they are transformed merfolk. And long ago, a tribe of merfolk found an idol of Demogorgon at the bottom of the sea. Not knowing what it was, they brought the artifact to their king. Everyone who touched the idol became afflicted with madness, including the king, who decreed that a sacrificial ritual be performed to open a gateway to the abyss. The ocean turned red with the blood of the slaughtered merfolk, but the ritual worked, and the king led the survivors through the underwater gate to Demogorgon's lair of the abyss. The merfolk remained there for generations, fighting for their lives as the abyss warped them completely, transforming them into hulking, evil monstrosities. Thus, the first Marrow were born. So this is part of the backstory of the Marrow, which you'll find in the Monster Manual. And you're going to see that a lot of the Monster Manual monsters are going to have this awesome flavor to them. This is another reason why, for example, having that Monster Manual is just added value. Even if you have a statistics block for the monster, it's not just about the mechanics, right? It's about the lore. And the Monster Manual is filled with awesome lore. It's filled with great illustrations, and it's totally worthwhile for your players to pick up. So even if they happen to have a statistics block for a Marrow from like a downloadable PDF that was available for free or something, that's not going to do it justice not to have that Monster Manual. It's glorious. Let's talk about D&D Expeditions now. This is a new program name, so I'll tell you a little bit about this and how this works. So D&D Expeditions is sort of its roots in sort of our old living campaign programs that we've had over the years, tracing themselves back all the way to the 80s. But what we've done is we've kind of looked at all those programs and we've kind of created a program that we feel best expresses sort of the need for the franchise player. So these are for our franchise players. They focus on convention play and store play. They're supported in both. They have a thematic tie to our main storyline. Whereas in D&D Encounters, you're playing through Horde of the Dragon Queen, and you're kind of experiencing that main storyline, right? You're getting the core experience from the Tyranny of Dragons adventure. Here, what you're getting is you're getting more of a thematic tie. So what you might see is instead of you actually fighting Tiamat at the end, right? What you'd wind up doing here is you'd wind up, dealing with other Cult of the Dragon members, dealing with other evil dragons and such that are connected to that storyline, the Tyranny of Dragons. This one's set in a very specific region of the realms. Our published adventures will kind of move around the realms from time to time, right? Right now they're in the Sword Coast. They might move later on. Here we're kind of setting everything sort of in the Moonsea region of the Forgotten Realms. So for those of you that are Realms people, you probably know what that is. For those of you that aren't, don't worry about it. It's cool. It's a really cool area, though. It's kind of like a Wild West area, right? So it's a great place for adventurers to hang out because it's almost bordering on lawlessness everywhere, and there's all these little petty tyrants that are setting up shop all over the place. Great place for adventurers to come by and knock them down, right? So this is a really cool region of the Forgotten Realms. And yeah, as adventurers can be run at stores too. There you go. It's right on there. So yeah, these are the idea here is we're delivering a program that has sort of a convention sort of style to it, but something that you'd want to run at your store, especially on the weekends. These adventures will take about 4 hours to complete. They're very episodic in nature, so you're gonna start and finish them in one session. They'll sit down, they'll play them, they'll be done, right? So if that's the kind of thing you want at your store, if that's what your players are looking for, this is your program. The other thing that's really nice about running this in store is the stores get a certificate pack whenever they order their D&D Expeditions kits. These kits are available monthly, so like Tyranny of Dragons is a seasonal thing. You get one kit per season. For the D&D Encounters program. But for D&D Expeditions in Tyranny of Dragons, you get one kit every month. So the kits aren't, blinged out with the player faction folios and such. That's all in D&D Encounters. But here, instead, what we do is we give you a certificate pack, and we also tell you what the featured adventures are that month, so what the new adventure content is. And then you'll have access to download those adventures through our site. The neat thing, though, is that if you're a convention organizer, you might want to go partner with one of your stores to feature D&D Expeditions at their show. The reason why is the convention organizers don't get access to the certificates, but you guys do, which is another great way to tie that regional play experience that's happening somewhere outside of your shop to your shop. So, reach out in your community too and check with some of your local organizers at conventions, see if they need a hand, and if they do, right, you potentially could partner with them and help them out, and they would be really happy for it, I think. It's a very good program, and we're excited to launch our D&D Expeditions adventures here at GenCon. So come on out and try and play some. There's another guy. Anybody know who this guy is? Yeah, This guy's easy, right? This is Death Slod. So Slod are a race of chaotic, semi-humanoid creatures, right? Very frog-like in appearance. Originally from, I think back in the day, from Pandemonium and such. We kind of tie them to the negative energy plane now. Well, at least this guy is. So he is suffused with energy from the negative energy plane, and he exemplifies evil's corruption of chaos. He takes sadistic pleasure in bringing harm to others. The Death Slod propagate their race by dragooning mobs of red and blue Slotty and invading other planes. Humanoids who survive the incursion become incubators for new Slotty. So those of you that know anything about Slod know that they're pretty gross. So, and they continue to be so. So yeah, the Slod are pretty awesome. Again, monster manual. You know, they're all the any of the Slod that you're used to seeing, you'll probably find them in the monster manual. They're pretty cool. So these are all brand new images coming right from the monster manual to you. Our last program we're going to talk about is D&D Epics. So we're actually going to have our first D&D Epics experience here at GenCon, and it'll happen on Saturday night. These are massive scale exclusive events. These are like the one-off kind of events. These are really big. They're too big for a small environment. We're going to be running this at GenCon, and it's going to be 700 or 800 people are going to be playing at once, right? This is a single event. You play in an adventure, and it's multiple tables all at the same time, playing through a same adventure and influencing other tables, right? So it's a huge interactive event. It is tied to our storylines at select major conventions. And this is where individual players can really have like a big impact on the big stage, right? So, for example, somebody can do something where they get singled out, and then that person will come back to your store, right, and be like, I was the one at GenCon that, that was able to do the thing, right? And that's just really super cool, and that really creates these great stories. And it just gets other people excited and enthusiastic for being a part of it and aspiring to be one of those players as well. So our first D&D Epics adventure is called Corruption in Crypt Garden, and involves these adventurers heading into the Crypt Garden forest to take on a dragon and a fortress, and it should be really awesome. We're really looking forward to running it on Saturday night. If you're in the area and you don't have a ticket for the event because it's sold out really quickly, please stop on by. Check it out. It's going to run at 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock on Saturday night. Oh, I got one more monster yet. Looks like this friend showed up. Anybody know who this guy is? Water Weird. Nice. Well played. This is a great illustration of a water weird. Water weirds are odd, which is why they're called weirds. They're kind of an elemental type creature. The Monster Manual describes them as such. A water weird is an elemental guardian bound to a specific water-filled location, such as a pool or fountain. Invisible while immersed in water, its serpentine shape becomes clear only when it emerges to attack, using its coils to crush any creature other than its summoner and those its summoner declares as off-limits. When slain, a water weird becomes an inanimate pool of water. So this is the water weird from the Monster Manual. And apart from me just, showing you cool images from the Monster Manual, one of the other reasons why I'm doing this is we happen to have a few Monster Manuals here. So what we're going to do tonight at our game night is we're going to be showing off a Monster Manual. So if you happen to pop by at game night and you want to see the Monster Manual live and in person, we'll be happy to show you one. It's pretty cool. I think you'll love flipping through the pages. If you do see a Monster Manual here, please, Monster Manual isn't out yet, so don't be taking pictures of all the pages or anything. But feel free to look on through and enjoy it in all its glory. It's a wonderful book. So now I'm going to show you a really great video that we put together for the Wizards Play Network to promote all of our new organized play offerings. This just went on our website a couple of days ago. I don't think, has anybody seen it in the room? It's really, very few people have seen it yet because it's just came out. So you saw it? Great, awesome. What did you think of it?
I liked it a lot.
Great. Well, we'll show it to the rest of you and hopefully you'll share the same opinion. So let me go ahead and I'm going to transition here, bear with me, into this video because I didn't want to embed it. It gets goofy if I embed it. So let's see if I can find it here. There we go. See if I can do the thing. There we go.
With the launch of the new edition of Dungeons & Dragons, we're changing up our D&D organized play program to make it more enticing than ever before. D&D organized play has a new name, the D&D Adventurers League. The D&D Adventurers League immerses your players in rich storylines with 3 related play programs: D&D Epics, D&D Encounters, and D&D Expeditions. D&D Epics features a pivotal storyline event from select major conventions, creating buzz around the current season of play in your store. Players will continue at the store level with D&D Encounters and D&D Expeditions. Our popular D&D Encounters program is available to all stores at all levels of the Wizards Play Network. The enhanced and improved D&D Encounters kits engage your players with even more of the components you've been asking for. These include a faction-specific folio with special items and rewards. D&D Encounters also provides table tents, character sheets, special folios for Dungeon Masters, certificates that players can take with them to any game, and the opportunity to join one of 5 factions which will endure from adventure to adventure. For each D&D Encounter season, Wizards of the Coast will provide a complimentary PDF that includes the first portion of each published adventure in the storyline. Players can continue the campaign by buying the rest of the adventure from your store. D&D Expeditions takes the fun of convention gameplay and brings it to your store through long-term engagement with the storylines. D&D Expeditions is designed for experienced players and features a longer play experience of about 4 hours per session, perfect for scheduling on a weekend. To make D&D Encounters and D&D Expeditions even easier for you to run, we've moved to monthly scheduling, similar to Friday Night Magic, and simplified D&D play reporting. The first time you schedule D&D Encounters per season, you'll receive a game kit that supports up to 20 players and 4 Dungeon Masters. Everything is provided up front, so there's no need to order more as the season progresses. Each month that you schedule D&D Expeditions, you'll get a new kit supporting adventures released that month. Schedule D&D Encounters and D&D Expeditions in Wizards Event Reporter every month. Go to wpn.wizards.com for more information and inspiration.
So that's our new video. I think it's pretty exciting. It gives you a lot of information too, I think. Kind of goes over most of the stuff we talked about a little bit in kind of a more brief form, but I find it to be pretty succinct. So let's see if I can, let me go back to my presentation here. Again, excuse me. There we go. One other thing too, anybody notice something cool in that video? There were some miniatures there that you probably hadn't seen before, some of them at least. So those are the new Icons of the Realms figures from WizKids. I believe you'll see them around the show. I know that we'll have some on display in Hall D in our gaming area, so if you want to actually take a look at the set and see all the miniatures, you'll see them in the case. So, all right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and fire away on questions here. So we'll go ahead and we'll start up here, and then I'm going to work my way back and then kind of around. So we'll go here and then to here next. So
we're super interested in the expeditions thing. What we can't do encounters because we have other stuff on Wednesdays. How do we get the kit, the encounters kit? Because you kind of need that to run expeditions, don't you?
So the question was, I have other commitments on Wednesday nights at my store, and I can't get a D&D Encounters kit, but my players are playing in D&D Expeditions because they can schedule that whenever. And how do I get the D&D Encounters kit? What do I need to do? Is it linked with D&D Expeditions? So the kits are entirely gravy. There is nothing in the kit that is going to prevent somebody from playing. If they're playing D&D Expeditions, they don't need any of the materials in the D&D Encounters kits, but the D&D Encounters kits contain a lot of really cool things that they might want, right? So it's not a question of need, it's a question of want. As far as scheduling is concerned, it remains a Wednesday-only program, so you'll have to find some way to run D&D Encounters on Wednesdays. One way you can do that if you don't happen to have a lot of space in your store, but you still have people that are interested in playing on Wednesdays, let's say you're running board game night or you're running a magic night or whatever on Wednesdays, you could go ahead and work with some other area like a cafe or something like that near you, partner with another public location to run your D&D Encounters events on Wednesdays there, and you'd still receive, of course, full store credit for that, and then you'd be able to get the kits to your players. All right, and then wait, I had one back here. I'm going to go back here, and I'll come back around. I had one right there, and then I'm going to come back to you in a minute. So.
I was going to ask, with the epic campaigns, because one player or like select players are going to get a chance to influence the storyline, does that mean we're going to see elements from the epics influencing future encounter seasons?
The question was, since the D&D Epic stuff has players influencing the storylines, will we see that impact future D&D Encounter seasons? The answer is yes. But not just D&D Encounters, actually more than that, right? It'll influence a lot of stories that we do in the future all over the place. I think you're going to see this actually happen more often with the D&D Expeditions content because it's a little bit more nimble, and we'll be able to go ahead and weave some of that player, some of the players, meddling into the future seasons. But you will see it, and the way we're getting that feedback is at these big shows, these big conventions like GenCon, for example. We're collecting that feedback via surveys. So if you sit down and you're a player and play at a table, you'll get a link to fill out a results survey afterwards, and then you can tell us exactly what your group did at the table, and then we'll take all that information and we'll process it, and we'll go ahead and influence the storyline. All right, I had one question over here. I'm going to go right over there, and then I'll get around to some other folks in a minute.
How is it going to affect game balance if you've got a group that's played multiple encounters that come in with their 7th level character and a new player coming in first?
Okay, that's a really great question. So the question is, how is it going to affect play balance if I have a player that comes in with a 7th level character and everybody else is playing first? Well, that's one of the only real restrictions on sort of what you can play with a character, right? Because not every adventure is, of course, written for levels 1 to 20, right? Every adventure is sort of written for a specific level range. What we've done is we've kind of gone through and divided up all of our adventures into mostly like 4 tiers of play. And if you look in the player's handbook right now, they kind of mention this. There are different tiers of play for the game, and the game kind of has sort of a different feel in each one of the tiers. So it's levels 1 to 4, levels 5 to 10, levels 11 to 16, and levels 17 to 20. So all of our play experiences will be kind of keyed to those tiers. So for example, if I have a 7th level character, that particular character would only be able to participate in an event that's for levels 5 to 10, right? It keeps the character outside of the level 1 to 4 range, which is not really appropriate for that character. And if that player wants to play in an event with some 1st level characters, the idea is if they have their 7th level character and they show up to an event where only 1st level characters or low level characters could play, the best advice you give them is, hey, you might want to create a new character for this one, right? And it's just a great way to get them jump back into the storyline and re-engage with it. So, but there will be many opportunities for that person to play that 7th level character too. Okay, I had a question back there, and then I'm going to come back over here to the green. There is. There's actually two places that are great sort of hubs for information. The first is our own official Wizard site. Some of you guys see the new D&D website? It's really nice, huh? It's a lot better organized too, and we really like the way it kind of flows. At the very top of the, if you go to the D&D website, dnd.wizards.com, at the very top there's a navigation area. There's an area that says play/events. If you click on that, it'll bring up some sub-navigations. There's one for D&D Adventures League in there. Just click on that. You'll have a bunch of choices from that, right? It'll have all the programs in there. It'll have some information for players, dungeon masters, and organizers. And then it'll also have a page for League Resources, it's called. So that League Resources page basically has everything on it. So if you want a character sheet, if you want a log sheet, if you want the player's guide that the players can use to understand how everything works in organized play, if you want links to our different community groups and things, all on there. It's all on one page. Very simple and easy to find. There's another really great resource for you as an organizer. I have a team of contracted administrators that I work with, and this team has created a site for you guys to use and ask questions. It's called dndadventurersleague.org. So this is a site that is an organizer resource hub. And the idea here is this is a support tool for organizers that ask questions that maybe won't be answered on the main wizard site, but are certainly valid questions and need attention. You can also, of course, just contact us. Just give game support a call. The retail support team will help you out with any questions. They have all the information they need. But yeah, those are the two main hubs if you're just looking to just get in and find out an answer to a question quickly. I had one up here, and then we'll go back here after that.
Sure. And I think they covered it, but I just want to make sure. So the certificates, they cross over from expeditions?
Yeah. So all of our certificates are all part of the D&D Adventurers League as a whole. They're all part of organized play. So it doesn't matter how you earn a certificate, that's always a part of your character. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I did not actually follow protocol. I'm in trouble now. All right, so the question was, does a certificate carry over from program to program? So if I earn a certificate for my character in D&D encounters, can I take that certificate to D&D expeditions? And the answer is yes. All of those certificates are all part of the D&D Adventurers League. And keep in mind, having a certificate does not mean that does not do anything more for you than basically establishing a trade connection, right? An ability to trade the item. You could still earn a magic item without a certificate, write it on your character's log sheet, and you have that item. Lauren, I'm going to get you in just a moment. I had one question over here.
I noticed everything you've been saying about the organized play programs is all related to Forgotten Realms. Do you have any plans in the future to do programs for any other worlds like Eberron or Darkstone or anything like that?
Okay. So the question was, you notice that all of the information we presented deals with the Forgotten Realms for our organized play programs. Is there any opportunity for additional worlds to be covered by organized play, like Eberron and Dragonlance, etc.? The answer to that is right now we're focused on the Forgotten Realms. So we're going to get everything kind of going with the Forgotten Realms here. It is sort of our flagship world. It's our most popular world, and that's where we're kind of putting everything right now. We'll see. Time will tell. Where we go with it next. But for at least the foreseeable future, we're gonna stick with the Forgotten Realms as sort of our core organized play experience. Lauren?
It's okay.
Okay. Back over here, and then we have one. I'll get one in back in just a minute. Your next one up.
I might have missed it. The D&D is the Epic.
Yes.
Where are those take place? And
They take place at large conventions like GenCon. So D&D Epic, the question was, where do D&D Epics take place at? And the answer is they take place at select major conventions. One of them is GenCon. PAX Prime will also be hosting a D&D Epics experience. They're kind of like the premier play for Dungeons and Dragons. So they're kind of like the top tier D&D sort of experience. So they're just at like very, very large shows.
Something you guys run?
Yeah, it's something that we run through we have a contracted organizer that runs them, but yes, we effectively run those events. So we have one way in the back that I pointed at.
I have multiple tables, like 4 tables on a Wednesday for encounters, but I have one table dedicated to parents, and they don't want to pay for childcare anymore, so the whole table of 6 wants to play at home on Wednesday nights. And my question is, can I still report them as playing in our encounters and provide them with kit materials?
So the question was, I have a table that doesn't want to play in my store, and can I still provide them with kit materials? The answer is, D&D Encounters is meant to be an in-person public play experience in your store. Or in at least another location that is publicly accessible and is associated with your store. So if you can't run it in your store, that's fine, but then it should be somewhere where the public can access it. That's the play program. That's how it's designed. Yeah, I would say that that's not really the intent of the program at all. I had another question that was, right in the middle there. Right, yeah, you're right there. Yep, the one that, stand up if you have a question. If you have a question, stand up. How's that? No one? No one has a question. Stand up. All right, you first, and then you. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please? Will D&D Epics Adventures get any playtime outside the United States? The answer is eventually yes. Right now, we're focused on just delivering the experience the best we can. Tyranny of Dragons, we're kind of getting the ball rolling. But eventually, as we find other major shows outside the U.S. that we think we'd be willing to partner with for those events, we will have those. Right there.
My question actually is about the magic items and things. Is that something we'll actually be reporting to WPN, so it's actually like somehow involved with their DCI number, or is it just completely kind of honest?
The question was regarding the magic items. Is that something I need to report with a Wizards Event Reporter or through the DCI or what have you? The answer is no. You don't need to do that. That's all on the players to take care of and track. The players have a log sheet, an adventure log sheet, where they write down all the stuff they gain from every adventure they play. That's their official record for their character. As far as reporting is concerned, and this is a great segue into that. All you guys need to worry about for reporting is reporting the player list at your events. So just report all your players and Dungeon Masters. Just record all their DCI numbers at your event, and you're done. We made it as simple as possible for D&D organized play reporting. That's it. Like that's as simple as we can get. And that's all you, as an organizer, that's all you really need to be concerned about as far as reporting is concerned. So everything else is taken care of by the players and by the Dungeon Masters. Right here, we got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go and there was one way in the back there too. Yeah. So right there first. Go ahead. Yep. No, gray shirt. Yep.
Regarding the certificates, are you just envisioning those as being a casual add-in, so there's no official use for those?
Well, there is one.
Trading,
Okay.
but it's not going to be used in any official sense?
Okay. So the question is regarding certificates, is there anything official about them? The answer is that the only thing that they really do is unlock the ability for a player to trade a magic item one-for-one with another player that has a certificate. There's no other purpose for them beyond that except to provide a memento of their play experience. So that's what they do, right? So there is an official purpose for them, that is to unlock trading. There is nothing else that they do beyond that. But they are very cool. So, and I think a lot of players will really be into them. All right, we have that question in the back there.
Any suggestions for if you have inexperienced players and experienced DMs, and then there becomes a conflict between the factions and your table?
So the question was, if I have a group of inexperienced players and a Dungeon Master, and there's a conflict between, say, the factions at the table, what do I do? Well, one thing is we have a cool resource called the D&D Adventurers League Players Guide, which covers stuff like this. And it talks specifically about the code of conduct at your gaming tables. I would advise people to kind of just read it over. It's a great refresher anyway, too, for your store, and to get in front of people, like what kinds of behavior are considered acceptable and unacceptable. As players and Dungeon Masters are concerned, they need to police themselves as best they can, and if they can't, then they need to bring that to the attention of the organizer so that they can go ahead and resolve any kind of issues. I don't anticipate that there is really going to be a lot of problems with people actually like taking the factions so seriously that they want to, create a player versus player environment. I think that's certainly, more of a personality thing with an individual. And if they already were a problem player, they probably would have found another way to create a problem in your location. But if you have some people that are inexperienced and don't know how to handle that, simply remind them that we're all here to have fun, and D&D isn't a competitive game. So, and I think that pretty much solves a lot of issues. So.
I've also forwarded that link to my entire player base and made it like read this before even building your character, and it's answered so many questions. It's so well written. It really just for everyone involved makes your lives way easier.
So Lauren has said that she's forwarded that link to a lot of her DMs, is that right? Or players? The player base. So the player base has received that link to the player's guide and looked at the code of conduct and such, and that it answers a lot of her questions. So a lot of the players' questions. So I think that reading over that will give you real clarity on what we're doing. So and then we're going to have time for one more. I'm going to go with the one right in the back there. Yep, that's you. Yep.
First of all, sorry for my English. I'm Brazilian.
No worries.
Excited
So the question was, outside of the United States, how do we kind of organize our communities and contact you? And the answer is that we do have a system sort of set up. It's sort of a structured system to kind of bring that information, spread as much information out as locally as possible. So at the top, we have here at Wizards, we have us, and then below us, we have our contracted administrators, which basically oversee sort of our day-to-day things. All the information on this, by the way, is in that player's guide and can be found on our website. Below our contracted administrators who oversee sort of our day-to-day D&D Adventurers League organized play maintenance, we have regional coordinators that have just been set up. The regions are pretty big right now, but those regional coordinators exist to facilitate events and create hubs, social media hubs, for people in your region to get in touch with other people, right? It's a way to connect gamers with other gamers. And below regional coordinators, certainly there'll be local coordinators that'll work, you know, like for an individual city, for example, or what have you. And they can all kind of tie back into that system. So I think as you see time going by, you're going to see the development of a more and more stratified sort of structure that is going to provide that information to even the smallest local group through a chain. So outside the US, and even within the US, the system will develop over time. It will take a little while for it to all roll out, but we have the basic structure already in place. And you can find a lot of this information by visiting our website or by visiting if you're an organizer, the D&DAdventurersLeague.org site. All right, folks. That's all the time I have for today. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'd like to go ahead and invite you to come by tonight for the game night and say hi to us there. Myself and Chris Lindsay will be there. Chris, did you have a word to say?
Just one word. So tonight when you guys come by the game night to play or to just hang out and see us, I'll be walking around with a monster manual. If you want to see the monster manual, come find me.
Yep. The game night's here.
It's right here.
Yep, it's right here tonight. And then the last bit is we'll be in Hall D all weekend. So feel free to come by and say hi to me. I'm happy to talk to you all weekend long, answer any other questions that weren't covered today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.